So I want to thank you, Peggy, for bringing up Miguel Ruiz is the author of that, what used to be called Four Agreements. I bet I have handed out 20 copies of that book in my entire history of ministry. If you haven't come across it, I invite you, please look up Miguel Ruiz, download it on your iPad or pick it up at the bookstore. It's powerful, has some wonderful advice. So there's an old saying that goes like this: every minister really has only one sermon, and in that all the years of their work, they find different ways to say something. I used to say that my key message throughout my ministry was about bridging understanding, meaning helping people to interpret old texts, scriptures from the Bible, the Vedas from Hinduism, and sutras from Buddhism. And then because I have another master's degree, I also wanted to talk about art imagery, religion that was expressed on the side of cave walls, as well as Celtic imagery. However, after all these many years, and with much reflection, I realize most of the time I'm finding countless ways to say, stop fighting, we have work to do. A board member from a former congregation reminded me that when she took the helm as president of the board, I gave her a lapel pin that said, "No biting, no hitting." Although thankfully, I have yet to see any member of a congregation become aggressive with one another, I have witnessed moments when individuals begin to quarrel and were less gentle with one another. It's not just in our faith organizations where we notice disagreements. Our friendships and partnerships can also be fraught. For example, I came across a meme on social media this week. It had a photo of the characters from the Andy Griffith Show. The text read something on the order of, "The reason Mayberry was such a happy place was because nobody was married." And the only person who was married was Otis, and he spent most of his time in the local jail drunk off of his rear end. Thankfully, we can find humor, can't we? We all know humans can find multiple ways to hurt one another. For numerous reasons, one person becomes deeply offended by something another individual has said or done. And that individual who said something can't understand why the other individual was so upset and didn't respect their opinion. Now, listen, I don't want to discount occasions when one is hurt or offended. And yet, I believe all of us could use a little bit of levity, especially when it comes to how we relate with one another. And even as we participate in the work we attempt to do to serve our vision and mission, meaning it might be helpful to take a peek at what keeps our faith organizations from making true meaningful change in positive ways. Now, the following scenarios I'm about to share with you are not coming from Unitarian Universalists of Clearwater. These emerged from a list of things various church members in other congregations at one time or other fought about. The comments compiled by Thomas S. Rayner began as a list on Twitter. So I'm only going to share 8 of the 25 silly things church members fight about. So it's an online article, and the person who compiled this list, Rayner, also added comments. So because they're kind of comical, I'll include them. He said a lot of church members and leaders were eager to share about fights, schisms, and conflicts in their congregations. They were likewise eager to point out the absurdity of these issues. There were the ones we've heard often: temperature in the worship center, color of the carpet, the order of worship, color of seats, walls. Here are a few others. And again, I'll include Rainier's comments. There were business meeting arguments about whether the church should purchase a weed eater or not. It took 2 business meetings to resolve. He said that was a wacky one. Arguments over what type of green beans the church should serve. Rayner said, I can solve this one. None. An argument on whether the church should allow deviled eggs at the church meal. He said, only if it's balanced with angel food cake for dessert. A disagreement over using the term potluck instead of pot blessing. So these are true stories. Rayner said, I get it. The concept of luck contradicts the theology of a sovereign God. This issue is very serious. Good luck trying to resolve that one. Some members left the church because one church member hid the vacuum cleaner from them. It resulted in a major fight and a split. He said, thus the second Electrolux church was formed. An argument over whether the fake dusty plants should be removed from the podium. Rainier said, just give them a little water, they should be fine. A fight over whether or not to build a children's playground or a cemetery on the grounds. I'm dying to know the results of that one, said Rayner. A church argument and vote to decide if a clock in the worship center should be removed. I think this is a very timely argument. Yes, these are silly. Many are absurd, but they're all distractions from a congregation's ability to move forward to make positive change. Thankfully, we can giggle at the distractions, especially when they're not ours. And yet, I wonder, what distractions might we notice here at UUC? Okay, don't say them out loud. This is a mental exercise. For heaven's sakes, I don't want to end up any arguments here because what I want to focus on is simply noticing distractions and taking some of the heat off of them and then reconsidering what true concerns need to be addressed and what items are masking real obstacles to positive change. The board had a retreat last Saturday. I was on study break. I'm sorry to have missed it. Aren't we all grateful for the folks who made a commitment to serve on the board? Thankfully, yes. Thankfully, UUC has excellent leadership and is experiencing a time of health and wholeness. I realize many of you long-timers know this hasn't always been the case, but here we are in a pretty good place. The role of leader today in our congregations is made even more challenging than in the past because of the many concerns looming in American society. For example, consider political polarization that has hardened and entrenched into tribalism across core social issues such as immigration, race, weapons policies, and more. The National Urban League has declared a civil rights state of emergency, citing federal efforts to dismantle DEI. And just a quick reminder, equity is one of our key values. Diversity and inclusion is also very important to us. This is a direct assault on Unitarian Universalists. There are growing anti-LGBTQ federal policies, such as restrictions on gender-affirming care and identity recognition. Mass deportation policies have triggered nationwide protests, and tactics have included detaining non-criminal and possibly U.S. citizens. These are concerns. Also, there are concerns about health care costs, the future of Social Security, Medicare, and more, including climate change. I feel you saying, oh, please stop. I'm already low. But I'm saying this because we have people who stepped up to serve in a time where social justice issues are at an all-time high and asking for our assistance. In a UU world, especially about climate change, this is from 2022, Alex Karima Newberry wrote an article titled Finding Hope in Uncomfortable Truth. She said, I won't tell you that everything will be okay. Honestly, it has never been okay for many of us, a reality which our society has normalized. We have normalized mass death due to COVID. Remember when this was written? Systemic racism is still an issue. War. We have collectively normalized poverty, inequality, and greed. Our society. With these realities, neither you nor I are deserving of comfort, but we are deserving of hope and growth. We can learn a great deal from communities who have faced end times over and over again. We can look at these people and find out how they survived through support and love for one another. For example, she wrote, as shepherds of the earth, indigenous people have been living through apocalypses for a long time: genocide, colonization, imperialism, and much more. My ancestors, noted Alice, remind me of the generations who have found hope through cultures of care and community and survived the end of the world over and over again. When we are living within these existentially foreboding times, our first response to the harm and violence around us must be to build kinship with one another. Community building offers radical hope. It reminds us that despite a world filled with trauma, violence, and greed and badness of many kinds, we are able to claim immense power by knowing that there is life worth fighting for. When we build resilient relationships with each other, we build networks that the system cannot destroy. When we actively choose to fight for life, we are claiming that this cannot be taken from us. Hope will never be taken from us. As you know, overall in mid-July 2025, we're grappling with overlapping crises, economic, political, technological, ethical, all magnified by institutional breakdown and societal fraction. So it has been said that congregations are microcosms of society, meaning just smaller versions of the world we are living in. If that is the case, I want to address disagreements before they occur, because I want UUC to remain a community of care. Arguments and conflict often stand in the way of creating positive change, and understanding how and why they do so is vital if we want to move forward effectively. When a congregation devolves into argumentative conflict, they lose focus on core goals such as vision and mission. There arises a loss of trust and participation. Root causes of upheaval are covered over and obstruct systemic issues. Energy is diverted toward battles of egos when mental space is better spent on creative solutions. When arguments become public spectacles, groups tend to retreat into homogeneous circles, reinforcing their own beliefs and deepening divisions. This polarization forms echo chambers where constructive outreach becomes nearly impossible. So, how do we move the needle from fracture to future cohesiveness? So, I want to point out here that conflict itself isn't inherently destructive. When navigated with care, it's often the spark that fuels progress and new solutions. Historically, pivotal moments from civil rights, women's suffrage, to environmental advocacy were born of tension and dissent. What matters is how arguments are handled, whether through empathy, active listening, inclusive dialogue, and a shared commitment to equity. In the local work we do, I'm asking you to consider seriously reflecting on one of our 6 values today. What are our values? Those of us who have been with us a while, I'm going to say the word jet pig, right? Justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, equity, and generosity, centered in love. With love at the center, Unitarian Universalists seek to move through the world honoring independent web of all existence. We embrace pluralism, the idea that we are all diverse, sacred beings. We don't require the adoption of a creed, but we request that all participate in this community of care when we come together with individual personal integrity intact. It is said that Unitarian Universalists value deed rather than creed. Therefore, actions that promote justice and equity have key values for why we do what we do in our public and private spheres. When asking newcomers why they signed the book and what drew them, they say, "I want to make a difference. It's social justice." We embrace transformation throughout a denomination's history. We have been and continue to be open to change spiritually, ethically, individually, and collectively. Transformation acknowledges that growth is ongoing and communal, not static, and certainly not perfect. And the final value I'm addressing is generosity. So when I say generosity, many people hear the word generosity and think in monetary terms. And yet, right now, I'm asking you to be generous with love and grace for one another. So I'm going to share one story. I have one way that I have worked to change my perspective in order to participate with others with more generosity. Ever since I began my ministry 17 years ago, I have felt it was my spiritual practice to create labyrinths for people to walk. I have created them in fields for summer camps, on concrete driveways for members of congregations to walk, and even a labyrinth for wheelchairs to move around at a Florida UU Ministers Association gathering in Orlando. Through the years at 16 different congregations, I have delighted in sharing a labyrinth on the occasion of solstice in December, including here at UUC. So imagine my surprise and discomfort when a local, new to the area rabbi said, "I have done an illuminated labyrinth every year at my former synagogue in Vero Beach. During solstice, let's do one together at my new synagogue as an interfaith event. What do you say?" What I wanted to say was, "No, that's not how we do it here. I create one with tea lights, not with a string of lights like you do, and it's kind of our thing," meaning that's my thing. Shamefully, these were my thoughts. However, I did not give that answer. I paused, and I thought of how much our small faith-based liberal communities in the Belcher Road area need to find ways to form relationships. Now more than ever, we have got to get to know one another. We have storms of all kinds, including threat of violence in our liberal traditions, our liberal congregations especially, as well as real storms like hurricanes. We need to strengthen our networks and intentionally grow our community of love and support. My response needs to be based on generosity rather than selfishness and small-mindedness. I said, "Why, yes, that's a wonderful idea." So as many of you know, our first solstice gathering was last December 2024. It was well attended by both congregations and we clergy in the Belcher area interfaith community. Now there's 2 other congregations who are participating. We're organizing another solstice gathering on Sunday, December the 21st this year at the synagogue on Belcher. It can be said that the ego seeks adulation and grand impact, but love seeks genuine connection. In those small, sincere acts, real change begins. I hope you will consider areas where your generosity can make an impact here at UUC, within your partnerships, your friendships, and the wider community. May it be so, and amen.